these people were so concerned about the life of their children, and they said somehow you need to accept. So all the people who used to be, the entire society used to be controlled by the religious heads at that time. And those religious heads told him that, okay, if both of you commit suicide, give up your lives, then we will accept all of you back, all the children at least, back into the fold of the Brahmin sect in which they were born into, and live normal lives and be accepted in society. So that was such a big thing. And their parents did that sacrifice. But in spite of that, when Dnyaneshwar and he had two brothers and one sister. He is the second. His eldest brother was called Nivruttinath. And then we had Dnyaneshwar himself. Then there was Sopan, and after that Muktabai was his sister. So these were the four siblings totally among that Dnyaneshwar had. And when they went, these people again, they backtracked on their promise, and they said, now you have to get from some very higher authority a permission, and then only we'll accept you back into the society. So they went with all these things, but Dnyaneshwar and all these people were very enlightened beings from a very young age, and Nivruttinath, who was the elder brother, was Dnyaneshwar's guru from a very young age. And after that, these people went there, and then they started reciting the Vedas and everything so well. But in spite of that, they were not really moved. Then finally, Dnyaneshwar made a buffalo to start reciting the Vedas. And that was when they understood that these people were not ordinary beings, and they have such tremendous spiritual wisdom and power that they had. And they were allowed back into the thing. But in spite of that, they continued to face a lot of ostracism and kind of lot of negative situations from the entire society because of this, because of the very what they call limited thinking that those people had at that point of time. So because of all these problems, but that never stopped him from learning more and more and becoming such a great enlightened being. At the age of 16, he had this thought that little more about their family, like his great-grandfather was a devotee of Bhagwan Pundarinath, and his two brothers, these were the two brothers, and he was a great philosopher. So he realized that the Bhagavad Gita had enough wisdom for everybody. The whole world, if they really understand the Bhagavad Gita, then they can really live happy lives. Their lives can be transformed, because what was being practiced at that point of time was only just very, just very superstition and that kind of things were being practiced. The real wisdom was not being practiced, whatever was there. So he said this wisdom must be available to everybody. Unfortunately, Bhagavad Gita till then was written only in Sanskrit, available in Sanskrit. Only a few people could read the Bhagavad Gita because they had to learn Sanskrit, which was a language which was limited only to a very small sect of people. And he then decided that it must be translated into Marathi, which is the local language of the people in that area. And he felt that this was the best way for people to really get the wisdom. And then he started at the age of 16, he translated the Bhagavad Gita. And that is called the Dnyaneshwari. The main text of the Bhagavad Gita which he has translated is called the Dnyaneshwari. And he was actually initiated originally by his elder brother, Nivruttinath. It was upon his guidance also that he actually took up this task of writing the Bhagavad Gita. So he won them over with either through his wisdom or through his way of ability to debate, or if they were still so stupid, then he would perform a miracle. So actually, how many of you really believe that miracles happen? How many believe that miracles happen? Actually, there is no such thing as a miracle. It is just the normal application of the spiritual science principles. If you apply these principles, certain things happen. Like in science, you do a certain experiment, you take hydrogen, you take oxygen, and then you light it, then it becomes H2O, and the big explosion happens because hydrogen is very inflammable. But to someone who doesn't understand science, it may seem like a miracle, like some big explosion is happening and then water is coming out of that, so this seems like a miracle. When we understand spiritual science, we understand that there are laws, universal laws, which govern how all these things happen. Then it doesn't seem like a miracle anymore. When you're able to appreciate this, every day in your life can become a miracle. Every moment of your life can be a miracle. So that's the beauty which they said. And however, he was so humble that he never wrote about any of the miracles that he performed. Other people have written about the miracles that he has performed, but he has never written in his own books about the miracles that he has performed. Because it was only just to make certain very stupid people understand the spiritual laws and how things happen. So some of the miracles I will still repeat because they are so inspiring. At one time there was one person who was really coming to do something very bad to them. So he was on his bare back, he made his sister to make rotis and cook food on his bare back. That means the bare back, the heat had become such a level, he could, through his yogic power, through his meditative power, he could do that. He could make that temperature to elevate to such an extent. We also hear of Shirdi Sai Baba, how he used to stir the palau without any utensils or without any handles, just putting his bare hand inside. So these are all masters who really understood spiritual principles, and just through the meditative practice, anything is possible. Today there are people in Ladakh and other region where some of the yogis in the Himalayas, I think recently even in YouTube and also on Facebook, on WhatsApp, some of these images were coming about how a yogi sits in the ice in the coldest season and how the ice is melting, but he's perfectly all right. Any one of us, if we go and encounter that kind of temperature, we will get frostbite and we'll get numbness and we'll have to virtually amputate our hands and legs within a few hours of exposure to that kind of environment. So how do they do it? It is just through the yogic practices. There are practices which will enable you to elevate your body temperature, and any kind of things are possible. So to the person who doesn't understand these processes, it appears like a miracle. Then even the thing of making the buffalo to recite the Vedas, all these things. And in one instance, there was one very arrogant master, teacher, who was coming here to test them, and he was coming riding a tiger, and then these 4 of them were sitting on a wall and they saw him coming. So when he saw them coming, when 4 of them saw them, then Dnyaneshwar, through his yogic power, made the wall to move towards that person. So that person then completely, he understood that these people have some phenomenal powers, and he became his disciple. So one of the persons who took up the task of teaching Dnyaneshwar, in one stanza of the Bhagavad Gita, he has given 17 different interpretations of that. And he had actually gone to learn from that person. Then they take up, sloka by sloka, how the meaning, and they debate on it. They try to understand what is actually being told, what is Sri Krishna trying to tell in this particular shloka, and what is the wisdom, what is the thing that we are supposed to practice. And he gave 17 interpretations. And at that time, that person said, I'm not your master. Now, from now on, you are my master. So that cooking food over his back, those kind of things are all the miracles that were attributed to Dnyaneshwar. So it implied that his spiritual power was so strong that he could do it. So there are many other works that he has written, but the most famous are Dnyaneshwari and Amritanubhav. These are the 2 of his most famous works. And Dnyaneshwari is nothing but the interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita. But we might say that, okay, if the Bhagavad Gita is already there and he's just interpreting the same thing, so what is the specialty? I mean, what is the uniqueness of this master when compared to so many other masters? Or why not? I mean, it doesn't seem like something very original. But what is important is, Bhagavad Gita was just taken as just a text, like some kind of a story, and people really never understood the essence of it. He actually brought into the people the real understanding of it, explained it in a way that all common people could understand. Till then it is just related, it's just narrated from one person to another, and it just continued from generation to generation. There were people who would be able to recite every verse of the Bhagavad Gita, but still in practice they wouldn't know anything about the Bhagavad Gita. Like at the end of it, you ask them something to practice something which is actually given in the Bhagavad Gita, they would not be able to do it. And they would not even have the understanding to do it. So whole society has become so ritualistic, completely following blindly rituals and blind understanding. So he brought them out of that with a very clear understanding, and he explained everything. So it's not just about translation, it is about the commentaries that he wrote on each and every shloka, what it means and how you need to apply that in your daily life, so that you can improve the quality of your life and your understanding, so that you can have a better life and better understanding. So anyone else in that situation, and then you also have to look at how tremendous willpower he had. Anyone in that situation, parents have committed suicide and the whole society is against you, they would have just given up. But just look at the kind of, and at that young age, just they were not even in their early teens at that time when all these things happened, and still in spite of that, they went and also look at that short period of time. Within that short period of time, how much of work has been done. And when we think we are doing something, we feel we're doing so much of work, and at the end of it, it's hardly anything compared to this. In just a few years of lifespan, accomplishing so much, writing all these translation, so many commentaries, it's amazing. You look at even the life of, say, Adi Shankara, what amazing wisdom, and he also passed away at a very young age, 30 or 31, but going all over India, 4 mathas, establishing all these mathas, teaching people, writing so many wonderful texts, commentaries, the Viveka Chudamani, the Saundarya Lahari, so many things, wonderful Kanakadara Stotra, so all Bhaja Govindam, all classics. That way, he has done this thing which is so powerful that the whole society has transformed because of that. They were able to really understand. The common man was now able to read the Bhagavad Gita and understand it properly with the explanation from a master who understands and practices it. If it is someone, I just recite to you something, what understanding will that give you? I have to, not only I have to tell you that, I have to explain, and then I have to live that. If I don't live it, then there's no meaning. You will not be inspired by someone who is not living the wisdom that is being taught. So the inspiration, so he was every bit of it, every bit of the Bhagavad Gita he lived and showed. That if in the Bhagavad Gita it was mentioned that miracles were possible, then here he has shown miracles were possible. He has shown what are the different ways you can approach life and how you need to live life. So this is, I was very fortunate that I was able to go to his Samadhi last year and visited there and meditated in this place. This is the live photo of when I had visited the place, Sant Dnyaneshwar Samadhi Mandir. And that was me meditating there at the place which is where a lot of people sit and they read, books are there, texts are there. But I was more interested in the meditation. Such an amazing power spot, so powerful. It is highly recommended that you must visit that place and meditate there. It's because it's very close to it's within that same temple that his Samadhi is there. And this is Dnyaneshwar photo over there. And very close to this place was the place, that's meditation space. And behind you see that is Vithoba, which is the local deity out there, like how we have in Andhra, we have Venkateshwara. So everywhere of us, you have these local deities, but ultimately the divine is just one. This was another friend of mine, Mr. Udhav. He is from Pune, so I'm thankful to him because he was the one who took me around, showed me the place. And it's a beautiful, near the river. There's a river which flows beside that Samadhi Mandir. So some of the teachings, if you really look at the teachings, of course, all his teachings are nothing but the complete essence of the Bhagavad Gita. But a few of those points, I think we must just remember once again. The first and most important thing he has told is that we need to understand that we are not the body. We are not the body. We are not this mind. We are not the emotions. We are the soul. We identify ourselves with this physical body and say, okay, this is the body, this is me, this is the personality, whatever your name is in this lifetime. You identify with that. But you are much more than that. You are not just that person with this name, because that is only your identity in this lifetime. But your soul has got a much deeper, much vaster, greater identity. And that's the first and foremost teaching of his, and which is what even the Bhagavad Gita says, that you are not the body, you are the soul, you are immortal. The soul doesn't die. So your wisdom carries on from one life to another life, just because your soul keeps moving from one body to another body. So don't get identified with just this body, because this is required only in this lifetime. After that you will transition. So everything changes, and but the soul is the only thing that remains permanent. That is what is the main thing. And then he says the soul, he also taught about reincarnation, because he knew that the soul is not only this one lifetime that we have. We live this life, we have lived before, we are living now, we are going to live again after this end of this life. We will continue to live. The soul continues, different body, different situations, different circumstances, but the journey continues. And it goes only until the point that you don't need to be reborn again, when your vibration level or your wisdom level is equal to that of the highest possible in this physical plane. Then you are no longer required to incarnate in this physical plane. So that is the second thing. And how to get moksha? He says it can only happen through meditation. Only the evolution can happen only through meditation, because through meditation only you can actually connect to your inner self, to your higher understanding. Now this is something which a lot of people till then had completely forgotten. Although in the Bhagavad Gita it is clearly mentioned, the very statement which says Yogi Bhava Arjuna. So what does the Yogi Bhava mean? It means become a meditator, meditate, know yourself, learn about yourself. Sri Krishna says, for many lifetimes, I have known you. We have lived together in many lifetimes. I know all of them, but you don't know all of them. You don't know any of them. So he urges him to become a yogi, learn about all this. Learn about, otherwise Arjuna also is identified only with that life. He is a great warrior, whatever it is, but he is only identified with his role as Arjuna, as son of Pandu in that lifetime, son of Pandu and Kunti in that lifetime. He doesn't know anything more than that until, of course, the wonderful teachings that he received from Sri Krishna, that he is a soul and that he is going to be born again. He was born, and this whole higher understanding came to him only through the teachings of Sri Krishna. So that is what he is telling again, that self-realization cannot be achieved by just reading about it or by logical arguments. Another thing that happened was, by that time, we had all over the country, many people, they were simply debating on things. We had Vedanta. I'm not saying Vedanta is wrong, but I'm saying the way that was carried out at that time was completely just pure intellect. They were no experience. They were not meditating. They were just debating, talking about it, reading, picking up some Purana or some Upanishad and endlessly debating on the same thing. For days and days they would go on discussing, debating and talking about what is this, what is that, and none of those things were actually really understood. Because if you say things like, define God, something that we have not experienced, what are you going to say? And someone will say something different. But there is no way that you can agree on any of these things. So that's why they would keep on debating. Rather than sit in meditation and try to experience what he said, instead of doing any debates and any of all those, just sit, meditate, connect to yourself, connect to the divine, and then you will become enlightened. And that is the truth. That is what is there from all great masters from ancient times have only said one thing, that the way to really enlighten yourself is to meditate and connect. That's all. And he also explained about these four parts of the yoga, parts of yoga which we know as Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, the Raja Yoga, and the Bhakti Yoga. Now, here another confusion. People think that you can take any one of the paths and you will get enlightened. Unfortunately, it's not like that. People still have that mistaken notion that you do only Karma Yoga, you will get enlightened. You do only Jnana Yoga, you will get enlightened. Or you do only Bhakti Yoga, you will get enlightened. Or you only do the Raja Yoga, which is the meditation, or the Dhyana Yoga, then you get enlightened. It has to be always a combination of all the four. Everything has to be in balance. Like, why did Dnyaneshwar's father's guru tell him to go back? Because going and meditating in the Himalayas alone will not give you the enlightenment. Okay, it may give you, it's maybe a certain time of your life, you may want to have deeper meditation, you may do that. But all that can be done here. All that can be done in your life, in your home, in your room, in the privacy of your own room, you can do your meditation. You don't need to go to the Himalayas to do the meditation. So then you become a Dhyana Yogi if you are doing the meditation every day, and you are really going deep into your meditations. And you have to do your karma, which is living in this life, living with your family, doing whatever you're supposed to be doing, whatever you had intended to do. You have some goals, some ambition. So that needs to be fulfilled. For that, you need to become a karma yogi. And then you also need to be a jnana yogi, because you can't rely completely on your own meditation experiences and the karma yoga. You also need to improve your intellect at the same time. So it's very wonderfully explained even in the Bhagavad Gita. We had this concept of this four, the Dushta Chatushtayam. How many heard of this concept, Dushta Chatushtayam? Yeah. It's a wonderful concept, Dushta Chatushtayam. It is about the four negativities that we have. Actually, it is not. It is explained with the help of four characters in the Mahabharata. But all these four characters are negative qualities within each one of us. Each of us has this negative quality, and I'll explain once I complete these two about the other two yogas, which is the Jnana Yoga. Then you have the Karma Yoga. Then, of course, the Jnana Yoga is about wisdom, reading about great masters, reading scriptures, read the Vedas, Upanishads, and not only from India. You should read all the great spiritual classics from all over the world, because the ultimate teachings are all the same. There is no difference if you really go into the essence of it. Then the Bhakti Yoga. The Bhakti Yoga is the thing where you are completely surrendered to the divine, where you become one with the divine. So that also needs to happen before you get enlightened, and only then the enlightenment happens. Because your soul has to move into the vibration which is equal to that of the divine. And that can happen once you reach to the Bhakti Yoga stage. So Bhakti happens automatically. Once you're doing all this, it's all a parallel process. It's not that first, it is nothing linear, like you do first Karma Yoga, then you do this, and then you do this. Nothing sequential. In life, everything happens at the same time. And evolution also happens at the same time. All these four paths also should be gone through at the same time, simultaneously. So only that lack of understanding was there. And again, there were a lot of debates about this. Someone would say, Karma Yoga is enough to get enlightened. This is enough to get enlightened. This is enough to get enlightened. So none of these things. So during one of my meditations, I had the opportunity to directly connect with Shirdi Sai Baba, and I asked him this question. I asked him that, because at that time, I was just a beginner in meditation. I didn't have all this understanding, whatever it is. And then I had this doubt. Or I even had this ego that I do a lot of work and I'm a hard worker. So if I'm doing all my work and doing my duty properly, then I should get enlightened. And I used to debate with a lot of people. Then finally in my meditation, since he appeared, then I asked him this question. I asked him, what is it that through Karma Yoga itself can I get enlightened? He said, no. You need to meditate, you need to do everything, you need to develop the devotion, you need to read, you need to understand more about things, because there are people who have learned more than you. And there are so many people in the world who have taught so many things. So you don't need to start rediscovering all those things. You discover your own journey and your own evolution. But there are many things which you just have to learn. But you don't apply it blindly. You just go through your own heart and understand. Like Buddha said, just because I'm telling you this, don't believe it. Don't even follow it. First, you apply it in your life. You first filter it through your heart. If your heart says this is not something I'm liking, then reject it. Even if I'm telling you, you don't have to follow it. Just you need to first understand whether this is suitable for you, this is the right thing for you, it is making sense for you or not. And then only you follow it. That's every master says the same thing. So even Shirdi Sai Baba said the same thing. He said, you meditate, you do this, you also read, and then you also have to develop the devotion. The devotion has to reach to a level where you feel no separation between you and the divine. And that is when your enlightenment will happen. It will not just happen by doing only the Karma Yoga. And this is, I think, a clarification that a lot of people need, because there is still a lot of doubt about how these things happen. So the path of yoga in which the seeker practices yoga and the meditation, these are the different things. And then the path of devotion, which we call bhakti, the four yogas. So I'll come back to this thing about the Dushta Chatushtayam. So there are four characters in the Mahabharata. One of them is Dushashan. Now Dushashan has a negative mind. His mind is always thinking negative. Every time some negative thought or the other. Then we have Karna. Karna has a negative intellect. That means he tries to intellectualize his own situation in life. He knows that what he is doing is not dharma by taking the side of the Kauravas. But he tries to intellectualize by saying, but no, but he was my friend and he helped me when I badly needed, when I needed recognition, when I needed help, he has helped me. So he was saying, no, that is right. So he had his own concept of what is right and what is wrong. He developed his own distorted concept. I would say there's nothing right or wrong. It's just a distortion or a lack of understanding or a limitation in your own thinking. So he developed this distorted thinking, this distorted concept. So with that, he was, you can say his intellect is negative intellect. Okay, and then we have Shakuni. Shakuni had a negative subconscious mind. Okay, we have the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and then we have our intellect, and then we have, of course, our soul. Now, the conscious mind is the manas or mind, which we say had the negative mind. Subconscious mind is chitta, which is under the mind, which is not known, but it has a lot of stuff which is there inside. All your past life stuff is there in your subconscious mind. Everything that you experience from childhood till now is in your subconscious mind. The situations that you went through when you were inside the mother's womb is also in your subconscious mind. You would have no conscious memory, but it is still affecting what is happening to you at this moment. If your mother was going through a lot of stress when she was pregnant with you, you will be carrying all that stress in your subconscious mind. You will be carrying all those patterns in the subconscious mind. You will not be aware of it consciously. So that is the subconscious. Now Shakuni had a very distorted subconscious mind because he has gone through a lot in life. Now I won't go into the detailed story of Shakuni's story, how he also had 100 brothers and all the things that happened to him. But I can just tell you in short that he had a very, very traumatic childhood and life that he lived. And all that is showing in his subconscious. So his subconscious is very disturbed. So there is a tendency to do things without even knowing why you're doing it, when you have that kind of a disturbed subconscious mind. So we need to understand through the meditation, go into the root of what is actually troubling us, why we have these distortions within us, and then we are able to transform it. When we transform it, then everything changes, our life transforms and everything becomes better, our quality of life improves, and we are beginning to make those first steps towards getting enlightened. And then we have Duryodhan. Duryodhan has the ahankar, like that is his negative ego. Now, ego is not a bad thing by itself. You have a positive ego and a negative ego. A positive ego is your sense of uniqueness. I am unique. There's no one else like me in this whole universe. There's no other soul like you. There's no other being like you. There's no other person who is embodied in this body like you. Even if you have a twin, that person may look similar, but you are not the same. You are completely different in every way. And that uniqueness is what we call as a positive ego. You must understand and recognize your uniqueness. You must honor it, you must acknowledge it. But you must not feel you're so unique that there is no one else who is comparable to you. Because everyone is equal. Everyone is God. Everyone comes from God. Everyone is a fragment of God. So that understanding needs to be there. So when it goes into that feeling that I am better than everyone and you are something down, then that is negative ego. And Duryodhan had that. He always felt he is very superior to everybody. Even a needle point of territory he was not willing to give. What is rightfully theirs, they had to get half the kingdom, but he is not even willing to give a needle point of territory to them. So that much of ego that he had, a sense of separation completely. And ego is nothing but a sense of disconnection. When you feel disconnected from your own divinity, that's ego. Okay? People give a lot of other meanings to ego. In my understanding, the simplest meaning of ego is, as long as you're connected with your divinity, with your own understanding, with your own soul and the potential and power of your own soul, you will not have ego. It's only when you start feeling disconnected, because that is always divine. But when you feel disconnected from that, and when you start operating from your mind, you start operating from your ego, you start operating from your subconscious which is not healed, then you go into that negative ego. So you need to go into that and understand where it's coming from and heal that. So these are the 4 things. And then the 4 solutions, or rather the 4 answers to how this problem can be solved, is also there in these 4 yogas. That is how these 2 things so beautifully tie up. So if you have a negative mind like Dushasan, you should involve more in Karma Yoga initially, until you get rid of the negative mind. So people who have repeated negative thoughts, and you can sense for yourself sometimes how negative your thinking can get. So in that case, you begin to involve yourself more in physical activity and activities and work and other things. Take up duties, responsibilities, and take up those kind of works. Automatically your thinking will go down. Your negative thinking also will go down because you will not have the time to think. Take up works where you don't even get the time to think. Even things like walking or doing gardening, you will not get the time to think. Because the moment you're involved in that activity, your mind will automatically go to the zero state because it will be completely focused on something which is a pleasant and positive activity. So that's what, get into the Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is the solution for a negative mind. Similarly, someone who has a negative intellect like Karna, they should read more. If unfortunately, and you see how beautifully Vedvyasa has written everything over there, Karna is an uneducated person. And although he was a great warrior, but he was uneducated. He never had the normal education like the Pandavas or Kauravas. So he didn't have access to reading any of these great masters. Even the gurus to whom he went, they rejected him because he was a Kshatriya. And they said, you cannot learn with me. So he didn't have that education. And that spiritual education, if he had it, probably his intellect would not have been corrupted. His intellect would not have been limited or negative. So he had to work on this intellect, and for that you need to read. You need to read more, you need to understand more, interact more with wise people, people who know more than you. Get into gatherings like this, meditation groups, once in a way. You don't have to do it every day and leave your rest of your life. That's another extreme. But in a balanced way, try to gain more wisdom and understanding through interaction with people, like-minded people, and also take the guidance from people who have learned more than you, who have started off their journey before you. There's nothing big or small in this. In the larger analysis, there is nothing like a disciple or a guru. It's just beautiful friendship between everyone. Even a guru is a wonderful friend to the students. And they just give their love and understanding and the wisdom. And through that, the evolution happens. So I like this beautiful definition of master, which is there in, I think, one of the books by Gary Zukav. It's called The Dancing Woolly Masters. It says that a master is someone who just started off his journey before you. That's all. So someone who started off even one day before you is your master and teacher, because they can teach you something. Someone has learned till B, he can teach you A and B, and you have not learned A, B, so up to A and B he'll teach you. Beyond that, by the time he will learn more, or if he is not learning, and sometimes it happens, you learn A, B, what next? Your teacher is also at B. He is not willing to move beyond because he is stuck in his ego. I know AB, so I am the greatest teacher, So beyond that, he is not willing to move. So then you have to look for a new teacher. It's simple and it happens. And when you put the intent that I want a new teacher, I want someone who can now take me from here. I don't want to be stuck in B for the rest of my life. So what should I do now? I need someone who can take me from here to there. So never feel, sometimes, people get stuck in this false sense of allegiance. They feel, I'm ditching my guru, I'm moving on to some other guru. There's nothing wrong in that. It is just that your heart should know, okay, this is the limit of the wisdom that I'm getting from this. So there's nothing wrong. Your journey has to continue. You're not going to stop at that. Even the guru's journey doesn't end. It goes on and on. It's an unending thing. Wisdom and learning is not something that stops. It just goes on forever. So you need to know that this teaching and all should happen. So coming back to this point, so the negative intellect, you must, reading is an absolute must. Read good, wise spiritual books. Read the Bhagavad Gita. Read Dnyaneshwari. Read all the commentaries on this thing. Read Adi Shankara. All these wonderful masters who have taught so many things. Read the Bible. Read the Quran. Read all the things and understand. There will be something of wisdom from everything that you can learn. So that is the thing. And then we have Duryodhan. So we have covered about the negative mind, it's Shakuni. Now Shakuni is negative subconscious mind. So what is the solution for a subconscious mind which is negative? Raja Yoga. That is, you do more meditation. So if Shakuni was involved in more and more meditation, he would have healed himself completely of all the pain and suffering that he has gone through, which is still stuck in his subconscious mind. So that is Raja Yoga. So Raja Yoga is for the negative subconscious mind, which is the negative chit, or what we call as the subconscious. Okay, then we have the Duryodhan. Now Duryodhan has a lot of ego, negative ego, ahankar. Negative ego is ahankar. Positive ego is self-confidence. Self-confidence and self-worth. Positive self-worth, self-esteem. That is a positive ego. Negative ego is pride, ahankar. Now, and how do you solve that? He never felt anyone is worthy of his respect. You understand that there are people and begin to respect them. Slowly the development will happen within you of the quality of bhakti. Slowly you will develop that bhakti quality within you. And when that happens, you will become a bhakti yogi. Along with all other yogas, you will also master bhakti yoga, and then you will be able to connect with the divine and realize the divine through the bhakti yoga. So wonderfully it's there. And it is not a surprising thing that these 4 yogas are mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, and these 4, the Dushta Chatushrayam, are also in the Mahabharata, and effectively Bhagavad Gita is nothing but a part of the Mahabharata. It's the same author, Vedvyas, who has written this. And sometimes I get this thinking that I don't know whether Krishna existed or not, whether any of these characters were real or not, whether they really were there or not. I mean, people may criticize me for saying something like this. I'm not saying they were not there, but I'm saying I can never be really sure. But I can definitely be sure that there was someone called Vedavyas with all this brilliant wisdom and understanding, and all he was doing was trying to teach us the highest wisdom through his books in a way that people could understand in a story form. I mean, if you tell all these concepts in an intellectual form, people would not understand. At least some could have understood, but most people would not understand. But you put this beautiful whole story, and in the story itself you weave all these wonderful characters so that people themselves understand how they should live and how they should not live. So there are both these things that are taught so wonderfully. And that is what Dnyaneshwar has done in his life. He has again explained the whole Bhagavad Gita once again, right understanding, so that right wisdom should go to people. It is not enough just to present just the text or just the information. The information, when you understand it, it becomes knowledge. When you practice it in your life and experience it, then it becomes wisdom. So most people are stuck at the information stage. The whole world today is information hungry. You have mobile phones, 256 GB, not enough. Now you need 512 GB. What are you putting into it? How much of it is of value? How much of it is something which is useful to you? So you need to know, so it's all information. Hardly 0.01% of that is something which you understand or you know about. And then out of that again 0.01% will be something that you really have understood and you're practicing and you're experiencing in your life. So remove all those things. Focus on developing your information into knowledge and knowledge into wisdom. This is something that you must do as soon as possible so that you can speeden up your evolution. Of course, you always have the choice of living just the way you are living without making any changes in your life. Because we have this wonderful gift called free will. You can do anything with your life. You can run fast, you can become a Usain Bolt, or you can just crawl in your life, in your journey, and do whatever you want. But it's up to you how you do it and how you progress. So when someone like Dnyaneshwar comes, why is it that he did all this in such a short time? That's a life purpose. He could have taken up to 100 years, still people would have called him great, and he could have had this similar effect. But the tremendous inspiration that he will have when someone sees, how can we do all this within the age of 21? So that inspiration is what, that huge shift that people will experience when they even just get exposed to his life and teachings. That is what is the greatness. So then he also talked about the manifest and the unmanifest. So the Shiva and Shakti principle. So according to him, Shiva is the pure consciousness, which is unmanifest. It has no form. And Shakti is what is manifest physically, what you can see physically. That is what we see, and that is the physical form. And between these two, there is always a constant interplay. That means form, consciousness becomes form, again form goes back to consciousness. What happens when we incarnate? Our consciousness, which is the soul consciousness, becomes form, which is the physical body out here, and we live this life. When we die, again we go back into that stage, which is again the consciousness. So there is a constant dance, which is like the dance of Shiva, is nothing but this constant interplay between the consciousness and the form. That is, both are your own states. Here you are taking this to experience certain things in this different dimension. Now another example is a seed. A seed is an example of consciousness. and form is the tree. Because the entire tree is already there in the seed. How the tree is going to become, the information, you may call it the DNA or whatever it is, but the entire map and the information of that is there in that tiny seed. And this thing which is billions of times bigger, that entire tree, but it is already there inside that. The same way, the consciousness which is Shiva has everything that is going to become manifest. The whole universe, all these galaxies, planets, and everything that is there in the whole universe has come from that pure consciousness, which is not solid, which is the complete, just an awareness of itself. So he has written a lot about this, about how this consciousness and form, the interplay between consciousness and form. So it is not to be treated like something like a feminine and masculine as in our understanding of feminine and masculine. It is the feminine energy and the masculine energy. It's also called in the yin and the yang. Okay, the yin and the yang, which they say the yin is the feminine energy, the yang is the masculine energy. The same way, you have the seed potential, the seed is like the masculine, and then the earth is the feminine. Because unless the seed goes into the earth, the life cannot come. The seed being there by itself will not create the form. The form comes only when it comes into contact with the feminine energy, which is the earth, the mother earth. That's why we say mother earth. And we say the consciousness is Shiva and then Shakti. So that is the principle. So he says it cannot be spoken of or spoken to. By no means it can be comprehended by the intellect. He's talking about the enlightenment state or the states of higher understanding. He says there's no use talking about it or speaking about it. You cannot even explain it. Someone who has a deeper experience, they can't even put it in words. The vocabulary is not enough to describe any of these experiences. So by no means it can be comprehended by the intellect. And he says, finally, when he talks about his own life, how it's going to end, he says, when sleep comes to an end, a man returns to his senses. Right? In the sleep state, you are not conscious of what is happening around you. Then when it comes to an end, then you come back into your consciousness. He says, now my individuality has come to an end. That means my role as Dnyaneshwar has come to an end, and now I move on back into my original state of consciousness, which is the soul state. So I have returned to Shiva and Shakti. And he says, like how salt gives up salty taste before it enters into the ocean. When the covering is removed, the air inside the banana tree, the trunk, it merges with the air outside. And he says, now I honor Shiva and Shakti by removing all separation and becoming one with them. So it has been said that he actually entered into Samadhi state live, physical, like without actually experiencing death as we are aware of. There are many great masters who have done that. I mean, Raghavendra Swami from Mantralaya and many others who just went into what they call a Jiva Samadhi, Sajiva Samadhi. They just go into a meditation, and in the meditation they just, the soul leaves the body and they can go. And it is possible. In the Ramayana, in the Mahabharata, it was Bhishma who was supposed to have had that thing. He left the body willfully without experiencing a normal death. So whatever form appears because of him. He's talking again about this whole thing about form and consciousness. And he says that actually, even though we're talking about form and consciousness and Shiva and Shakti as if they are two different things, in a way, again, you cannot even differentiate between the two. You cannot distinguish between the two also. Because the gap is so negligible in terms of, it's just a different state of being. The consciousness state or the form state. But eventually it's only one. Two aspects, he says, two aspects of the same thing. Like how even the Chinese thing, they say the yin and yang are two aspects of the same thing. They are not separate, but they just blend into each other. The same way Shiva and Shakti merge into each other and they cannot be even distinguished. And he says, and some wonderful statements. He says, when he awakes, the whole house disappears and nothing is left. And they become two for the purpose of diversity. That means for the purpose of creation, they become two. Because only when both come together, then creation can happen. It's like both are seeking each other and for the purpose of becoming one. So each is an object to other and both are subjects to each other. Only when together do they enjoy happiness. Only when they're together, then the true happiness is there. So beautiful. These are all parts of his poems. He's written many poems also. Beautiful descriptions. So, thank you, friends. It was such a wonderful experience presenting the wisdom of Sant Dnyaneshwar to you.
ఆత్మ జ్ఞానులకు నమస్కారం. యూట్యూబ్ లో పిఎంసి ఆన్లైన్ టీవీని వీక్షించడానికి సబ్స్క్రైబ్ చేసుకోండి. ప్రతిరోజు వచ్చే సరికొత్త అప్డేట్స్ కోసం బెల్ బటన్ నొక్కండి. ఆధ్యాత్మిక ప్రపంచంలో సంచలనం పిరమిడ్ మెడిటేషన్ ఛానల్. పిఎంసిని సులభంగా మన అరచేతిలో వీక్షించడానికి వచ్చేసింది పిఎంసి మొబైల్ యాప్. గూగుల్ ప్లేస్టోర్ నుంచి పిఎంసి యాప్ ని ఇప్పుడే డౌన్లోడ్ చేసుకోండి. పత్రిజీ ప్రత్యక్ష ప్రసారాలు, పిరమిడ్ న్యూస్, ధ్యానుల అనుభవాలతో పాటు మరెన్నో వినూత్నమైన కార్యక్రమాలను వీక్షించండి. పిఎంసి యాప్ మీ ఫోన్లో ఉంటే ఆధ్యాత్మిక ప్రపంచం మీతో ఉన్నట్లే. మిమ్మల్ని మీరు వెతుక్కోవడానికి నిరంతరం మీ వెంటే ఉంటుంది పిఎంసి.